For Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton, the W15 marks the end of the most successful partnership in the history of Formula 1, winning 6 world titles and countless victories together, and they will be hoping that at least in part add to the number of wins that they have claimed together with the W15. The W15 will be the first ground effect era car produced by the Brackley and Brixworth team that isn't based around the Sidepods flop. The team will have no doubt set lofty ambitions for themselves this season, and judging by the sheer scope of the changes made, they should be on the right path to achieving that. Starting off with the W15's front ring, this has undergone an extreme redesign from last year and is without doubt the most interesting looking front ring this season thus far. For starters, the nose itself on the W15 has been repositioned to sit on the second element of the front ring. This is a shift away from last year where it was housed on the first element. Away from that change, the front wing flaps have seen a reprofiling for this year, with the aim of guiding the air around the outside of the front tyres. But this is where things become crazy, and amazingly, on the actual real launch car, it seems the fourth element of the front ring does not appear to be mounted onto the side of the nose cone in the traditional manner, and what they're trying to achieve is extremely interesting. It appears Mercedes are trying to achieve with their front ring the rebirth of the inboard vortex known as the Y250. Now, for legality purposes, the team have attached this fourth element by way of a legality wire. This would be huge for the team if they can achieve this and it's passed through the FIA scrutineering. But I think some of you may be asking, well, what is the Y250 vortex? Let me explain this to you. Basically, in the previous eras of Formula 1, with the front wing, you could also generate a inboard wash as well as the outwash, and this was known as the Y250 vortex, and when generated it influenced the airflow characteristics downstream of the front ring as seen in the image above. This improved the efficiency of the underbody, which in this current case would of course be the floor, which is the most important, but it also helped the cooling systems and rear ring. So, in closing, if Mercedes actually could reintroduce the Vortex Y250, this would be an impressive as well as amazing coupe for the team and should help increase the downforce by a considerable margin, I would presume. Moving further back to the front suspension on the W15, they've retained the pushrod layout from last season, but have now incorporated anti-dive fully within its design. This is something Red Bull have pioneered throughout the ground effect era of F1, and Mercedes are now finally playing catch up. But you have to do this in 2 sections. One is with the front suspension, while you also have to incorporate the design into the rear suspension. More on that later. But to briefly summarize what the anti-dive layout suspension is all about, it's about making sure under braking that there isn't too much bounce for the driver, and it creates a much more stable platform, and it will help to cure any understeer housed within the car. One of the first major areas the team would have had to have addressed over the winter regarding the W15 is that of its chassis. As for the last 2 seasons, it's remained largely untouched thanks to having run their Sidepods concept. Now, for 2025, this will have undergone a dramatic redesign since the team have now adopted the approach of incorporating the downwash concept for their latest challenger. Among many changes will be the repositioning of their side impact structures in order to help open up the full potential of their chosen concept design for this season. This was one of their problems last year with the W14 when they introduced their first major in-season upgrade at Monaco. As the chassis was designed around the Sidepods, they were stuck with the limitations they had created around that particular concept. This meant they could not follow Red Bull's route of having a underbite on the sidepod air intake, as well as sculpting a more dramatic undercut with their sidepods. For 2025, this is now changed, with the W15 sidepods now incorporating those exact design features I've just mentioned. Well, they incorporated all the features minus the underbite that Red Bull had last year, who ironically have gone in a different direction as well for this year on the RB20. What Mercedes have actually done is created a completely different shape for the inlet. It somewhat reminds me of a Toblerone. If you're not sure what that is, I will put a picture on the screen right now. So yeah, you kind of get my drift with what I mean by the shape of the inlet. And not only that, it's created a pretty big undercut, I would suggest, and a very unique looking undercut as well. That would, I would say, help to increase the flow of the air that goes around this particular undercut towards the back of the Mercedes W15. And now we come to the engine cover, and Mercedes have completely done away with the gullies that were housed on top of the W14, and instead they now have a much more, I would almost say, Red Bull-esque engine cover and, cannon outlet. It seems like the airflow is going to be directed all the way to the lower beam ring and into the diffuser from the looks of things. It also suggests there's more or an equal amount of centerline cooling, as was the case last year with the W14 as well. Another major revision that the W15 has undertaken is the rear suspension layout, with the team moving from a pull rod to push rod design. This change from a pull to push rod layout is primarily for aero and packaging reasons and is dependent on the overall car's philosophy. This layout change requires a massive redesign for the entire rear end of the car. This will include a redesign of the gearbox housing and insides, as the rear suspension is mounted directly on the gearbox housing. For 2022 and 2023, Mercedes' gearbox was of course built around the zero pod design, and so for 2024 there's going to have to be a complete redesign of every component housed within it. The Mercedes gearbox, obviously for those 2 years, had a pull rod suspension layout and an inboard suspension such as a torsion bar, which is the yellow dotted line built in the middle. These inboard suspension parts are built in behind the gear cassette, which is highlighted with a red circle, and the fairing of the drive shaft is slanted and thick. This is a change that all Mercedes power teams will receive for 2024, with the factory outfit making this change on their W15 to help their anti-dive suspension layout, which they are rumoured to have developed. Right guys, that is the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed this detailed breakdown of the new Mercedes W15 and all the intricacies and hidden secrets from within it. If you have, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will catch you all in another F1 video later on.